After you've generated a lot of ideas, now's the time to start thinking about which of those ideas are best. You can start to eliminate the different ideas that you think aren't going to be feasible or appropriate. If you're doing this in a group, you might want to do a few rounds of voting, and that way people have a chance to express which ideas they think are going to be better. When you're down to a handful of ideas, then you're going to want a structured way to compare those ideas to each other without going in circles. Throughout the comparison process, remember that you want to be having a discussion, not necessarily an argument. And you're going to want to do information-based decisions when possible. So basing your decisions on information you've gathered, maybe through surveys or interviews with different people who are experiencing the problem you're trying to solve. One comparison method for a handful of ideas that works pretty well is called the Pugh Chart, also referred to as the selection matrix. The basic idea behind the Pugh Chart is to compare only 2 ideas at a time, and comparing all the ideas relative to one. Let's take a look at an example with different fasteners. So here you'll see the different fasteners being compared are the nail, the ring shank, which is basically a nail with several rings on it, the staple, and the screw. On the other axis, you'll see the different criteria that these fasteners are going to be compared on. So you'll see the rate to apply the fasteners, the cost, the holding power, and the effort to install. So you want to start by picking what's called your datum, or your reference idea. This is the idea that you're going to compare all of the other ideas to, one at a time. It's a good idea to pick something that you're generally pretty familiar with as your datum or reference. So here, the nail, which most of us are pretty familiar with, is going to be our datum. And so you'll see a row of S's. So let's start by talking about the rate at which these different fasteners can be applied. So for the ring shank, that can be applied basically at the same rate a nail can. So that gets an S. So that's the same as the datum. The staple gets a plus because it can be applied faster than nails. And the screw gets a minus because it can't be applied quite as fast. The next thing let's talk about is the cost. The ring shank can be a little bit more expensive than the nail, so that gets a minus. Staple, a little bit less expensive, a plus. And the screw, more expensive, minus. For holding power, the ring shank can hold more than a nail can, so it gets a plus. Staple can't quite hold as much, that gets a minus. But the screw can do exceptionally well in holding power over the nail, so it gets a double plus. Now, effort of installation. Ring shank, basically the same, that gets an S. Staple, a little bit easier, that gets a plus, and the screw gets a minus. It takes a little bit longer and is a little bit harder to install. Once you're done filling out this chart, you can tally up the different pluses and minuses to get a mathematical solution for which of these ideas is superior. Now, you may not be satisfied with the solution, so the important thing to think about is why you might not be satisfied about it, and discuss with your group and reflect on the process that you came to that answer. The discussion about the different ideas is more important than the mathematical solution at the end, so keep that in mind. You can also compare opportunities on a Pugh chart. It doesn't necessarily have to be technical solutions. For example, let's say we're on a team where we have the opportunity to improve bike storage, or we might want to go after the opportunity of improving the flour measuring process. Or maybe the problem that we want to solve is entertaining cats. Cat boredom can be a serious issue. If we're going to try to decide between which of these ideas we want to pursue, the kind of criteria we might compare them on are maybe market size or feasibility of addressing those solutions. And finally, maybe team excitement. That way, team members have a way to express how excited they are to try to solve those different problems. You can add weights to the different criteria, and that way you can determine if some criteria are more important to address than others. And that will affect the final ranking when you tally up the scores. Remember, the goal is to come to a satisfying conclusion. So if for some reason you're not satisfied with the process you took, it might be a good idea to just reflect on why that is and discuss with your team members or think on your own why you arrived at the solution that you did.